All right, good morning. I'd like to call to order this meeting of Thursday, August 15, 2024, the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments. Madam Clerk, can we get a roll call, please?
Thank you, Chair Lavanino. For the roll call, Director Williams. Hartman. Absent. Capps. Nelson. Osborne.
Here.
Infante.
Here.
Julian.
Here.
King.
Here.
Patino. Perotti.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Rouse.
Here.
And Chair Lavanino.
I'm here.
Okay, we've got a quorum.
Great. All right. Please stand and join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment today's meeting?
Chair Lavanino, we have no requests for public comment in person or online.
Okay.
Is there any in Santa Barbara?
No request for public comment from Santa Barbara.
Thank you.
Okay. Would any directors like to pull any items off of the consent calendar? It's A through L. None here. Santa Barbara? Buellton? Okay. Anybody from the public pull any items from consent?
No request for public comment.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to move the consent.
So move, Julian.
Second, Infante.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Okay. Director Hartman. Osborne.
Yes.
Infante.
Yes.
Julian.
Aye.
King.
Aye.
Patino. Absent. Perotti.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Rouse.
Aye.
And Chair Lavanino.
Aye.
Motion passes 8-0.
All right. Yep, there, that takes us to item number 5. Madam Clerk, can you read in 5A, please?
5A, hold a draft 2025 Federal Transportation Improvement Program. Hold a public hearing. Oh my God, sorry, my mic wasn't on. Start again. 5A, draft 2025 Federal Transportation Improvement Program. Hold a public hearing of the draft 2025 Federal Transportation Improvement Program.
Good morning, directors. Jackie Mata, I'm a transportation planner in the programming division at SBCAG. And today we are holding a public hearing for the draft 2025 Federal Transportation Improvement Program, also known as the FTIP. And so as the federally designated metropolitan planning organization, SBCAG is responsible for adopting the FTIP every 2 years. And so this next full update is the 2025 FTIP, which is required to be adopted and submitted to Caltrans by September 30th. So some background on the FTIP is that it identifies all projects with federal funds and their matching funds. So at a minimum, this includes all federally funded highway, transit, and other surface transportation projects in the county, specifically that are scheduled for implementation in the next 4 years. So that includes 24-25 to 27-28. And so there are projects that are included for information only, and these are projects with funding beyond the 4-year FTIP period or with prior funds that just haven't been completed yet. And so this new FTIP will also incorporate amendments that the board has approved most recently in the last update. And so it also includes changes to scope, cost, or schedule that project sponsors have submitted since the drafting of the document. And so we began the draft with assistance from TTAC in June. And moving on to the public hearing, the draft FTIP was released on August 7th for a required public comment period of 30 days. And so any comments received after today's board meeting will be presented to the board on September 19th. And the end of the review period concludes on September 6th. And so as mentioned earlier, we presented the draft 2025 FTIP, the project sheets to TTAC in June, and the full draft document was presented to them in August, and no changes were requested. There was a lot of internal work with the local agencies, so I think so far the projects look good. And so that concludes my item. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions from the directors here in Santa Maria? How about Santa Barbara?
No
Or
questions.
Buellton, just speak up. Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, great. Is there any public comment on this matter?
Chair, we have no requests for public comment.
All right. So this is just to hold the public hearing, so do we, no vote needed. All right, Jackie, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to 5B. Madam Clerk?
5B, Regional Broadband. Receive a presentation from staff on progress made regarding work tasks under the local agency technical assistance grant awarded to the County of Santa Barbara and SBCAG, and next steps related to funding and implementation opportunities.
Good morning.
Good morning, directors, Chair Lavanina and directors. Fred Luna here with Project Delivery and Construction Division, which now includes broadband for the last couple years. So happy to be here to provide an update to the board on recent developments in the area of broadband implementation. I see the slide shows up. Can you go to the next slide, Lauren? Thanks. So we were our last presentation on broadband updates was earlier this year in February. Today I'm going to cover just a quick background on where we've been and some of the key milestones that we've covered. Some of the progress to date, our main efforts right now are working under a grant called the Local Agency Technical Assistance Grant, where we are working on 3 main deliverables that are listed there on the on bullets. And then I'll do a quick forecast for you to show you where we plan on going under that LATA grant and how we're performing with both the timeline and the expenditures. And we can't talk about last mile connections without talking about the state middle mile efforts. Obviously, we rely heavily on that. And then the federal funding account in September of 2023, your board approved work or applications were submitted by our partner at the Golden State Connect Authority for applications in 4 priority locations. So I'll give you an update on that and then talk about some next steps. Next slide. Okay, so this is a quick background on our how we got to getting the local agency technical assistance grant, in which we're partnered with the County of Santa Barbara. It really relied heavily on all the work that was done in the planning stages and the development of the broadband strategic plan, which laid out key initiatives for regional broadband implementation. And many of those were included in the scope and application that was applied for to the California Public Utilities Commission. We did hear in the spring of 2023 that the county, as the main recipient and SBCAG as a sub-recipient, were awarded $1 million. So shortly thereafter, the board approved a memorandum of understanding where we would work collaboratively with the County of Santa Barbara to implement the work tasks that are shown there at the bottom. The high-level network design, which is essentially just making last-mile connections to households throughout the county. And so priority areas were identified in the broadband strategic plan, so we would start focusing on making those last-mile connections. And then developing a programmatic EIR for the entire county, and I'll talk about that shortly. And then a governance structure for regional broadband with the Joint Powers Authority. Next slide. So this slide might be a little busy, but it's color-coded based on the work tasks that we were in the LATA grant, and it essentially shows you a timeline of some of the key milestones that have been achieved under the LATA grant to date. I mentioned the MOU that SBCAG entered with the Golden State Connect Authority to initiate those last-mile connections last summer. And so that was really an opportunity. That was a bird in hand with the MOU in place with the county. Your board was able to act quickly and enter into an MOU and then prepare applications for the funding. That was, the deadline was in September of 2023. So that worked out and we got 4 locations in the queue. And that's shown in September 2023. So that's all related to the network design. The green addresses the programmatic EIR. So in October of that same year, in 2023, the board approved releasing an RFP for selecting a consultant to prepare that. You can see further down in February, the board approved the contract with ESA, and so I'll give an update on the progress to date on that work task shortly. And then on the governance structure, so that same, in October of 2023, an item was presented to this board providing the board with some options as to how to create that regional broadband implementation. The board approved moving forward with amending its existing Joint Powers Authority agreement. And so County Council worked with councils from our member agencies to draft up language, and then that was circulated and it's been approved as of July 2025 by all the member agencies. So that essentially that work task is done under the LATA grant, and I'll explain where that puts us in the ability to kind of leverage some cost savings under the grant to some other work tasks. Next slide. So high-level design. So I mentioned before, this really is how we're getting fiber internet to households across the county. And so what I showing here is 2 phases of high-level design that SBCAG has undertaken with our partner at Golden State Connect Authority. The phase 1 was what was approved last summer. And that's been completed and was used as the basis for our applications for federal funding account funding. And those included the areas that are highlighted with the 1 or the green circle, Casmalia, the city of Guadalupe, Los Alamos, and then the Cuyama, New Cuyama areas. And we had about $100,000 in the grant, approximately. And we were able to look at another opportunity or another slug of priority areas because we had cost savings. The initial phase cost about $45,000, so we were able to implement a second phase. So this board approved in May 2024 an amendment to our agreement with Golden State Connect Authority for phase 2. And that included some additional areas. You can see there in blue, Refugio Canyon, the whole 246 corridor between Buellton and Lompoc, Los Olivos east of 154, and then the Cisquag-Gary area east of Santa Maria. So that network design is complete. We're still going through some final work on the cost benefit and seeing where that stands for funding programs with our consultant, but we're nearly complete. Next slide. So the programmatic EIR, so when we were back here 6 months ago in February of 2024, we were just authorizing the contract with our consultant. So a lot of work has been done to date to get this going. Initially, we started with preparing a project description for the programmatic EIR, which essentially is going to be a tool that SBCAG, our member agencies, internet service providers can use to implement broadband projects going forward and tiering off of that. And so the notice of preparation was prepared to the EIR, and then we had a public meeting in June of this year. Now we're in the middle of drafting the actual EIR, and our plan is to present that to your board in November of this year for public circulation. And then we'll come back in February of 2025 for the final approval. To date, we've received very few comments. I think we received about 3 comments through the notice of preparation process. Mostly just interested in areas that might be covered or the type of work that would be done. And there was some confusion as to wireless versus fiber, and so we had to make those clarifications. Next slide. Under the Joint Powers Authority, I mentioned previously in October when we brought some options for the board, and then in February, the amendment language was drafted and began the circulation process with our member agencies. And then in July, that was formally approved. The last agency, the County of Santa Barbara, approved that on July 9th, I believe it was. And so that's been sent out to all our member agencies, and they have a copy of the amendment. Where we stand to date, this task was originally envisioned in the LATA grant to be, could have been fairly complicated if you're looking at either modifying or changing radically maybe the Joint Powers Agreement, or even creating a new Joint Powers Authority for regional governance of broadband. But your board approved a fairly modest amendment, and so we were able to complete this with a low amount of resources, and we didn't have to hire special counsel. That was also something that was originally may have been envisioned. So there's quite a bit of cost savings, perhaps about $150,000 that we can rework and try to currently we're in conversations with the Public Utilities Commission on how we may be able to do maybe some additional high-level design or other things that are currently allowed in the grant. Next slide. So this just gives you a snapshot of the 3 deliverables on the LATA grant, the timeline implementation. So the 2 phases of high-level design I've already mentioned. Phase 1 complete, phase 2 still underway. You can see that by the status line there in the middle of 2024. And then the program EIR, so we're done with the notice of preparation. The draft EIR is currently in progress, and then the final EIR will be complete by February of next year, well within the deadline that's shown of May 1st of 2025. That's the grant deadline for completion. And then the JPA amendment is complete as well. So we're performing pretty well on our work tests. Next slide. So we can't, like I mentioned at the beginning, we can't talk about last mile connections without an update on middle mile. There might be some changes to this slide from what was in your board packet, just because I had recent conversations with California Department of Technology, who's responsible for the middle mile network. So what you'll see here is a screenshot from their interactive map that's available on their website, and I think the link was provided in the staff report. So anyone at your agencies or on your staffs can kind of go there and look at the most recent progress on broadband statewide. For Santa Barbara County, because there's been a lot of volatility on the mapping over the last year because of both the unfortunate combination of both budget cuts and cost escalations related to construction. We ended up with about 180 miles of middle mile network. What you see here is essentially a route that runs along the coast, the Santa Barbara South Coast, then up through Highway 1 into Lompoc, out to Surf Beach, and then up the railroad right away into Guadalupe. That's the portion shown in blue, and that's existing fiber that's owned by Lumen. And then the other area is going to be new install, that's shown in the black there along 166, down through Santa Maria, and then from Guadalupe south on Highway 1 to Highway 135, then down 101 to the San Ynez Valley. The reason why that might look a little odd coming down 101, then to 154 to 246 is when the CDT was looking at award, and the CPUC were looking jointly at awards for federal funding account applications, there was a CHUMASH application that was submitted for Camp 4. And I think I mentioned this in the staff report. So they wanted to make sure that the middle mile obviously supported the awards that were being done for federal funding account applications. So that spur that goes down there will help facilitate that work. And those installs will be done by a group called the FIERCE, or they're also known as the Central Valley Integrated Network Company. And so they've been doing a lot of work, obviously, in the Central Valley. This is a recent change to have them work on Highway 166. Originally, the plan was to have Caltrans do the build and install along that, but based on costs they were getting from contractors and through the general process, those seemed high. So this does seem like a win, though it's a lease back, and And so all these will be leased back by the state and owned by these two companies as partners to CDT. Next slide. So I just thought I'd give the board a quick implementation overview of where we go and where, on these, on how we get actual install. Obviously, the CDT is under the mandate to make connections by 2026. So how do we fit in there? As far as you can see there that the part that I described in the orange is the coastal phase. That's the Lumen network, was installed. They plan on starting that based on conversation I just had this week with CDT reps by the end of this year, and that'll continue through a good part of 2025 and ready to connect by the end of 2026. Those could go faster. They're non-committal about any acceleration on it at this point, but considering that's already underway, that could go faster. What they have to do after they pull the fiber that's existing is that they have to create these connection points called huts or ports so that the last mile can connect at various locations across the network. And then on the inland phase, those are all the other highways that I mentioned, 166, 135, and 154. Our estimate is that sometime next year that'll install. That Fierce group is still doing the design of that, and then they'll be ready to go to the permitting and the installation of that. The ready to connect would be sometime in 2026 as well. And then the last mile connection. So the most recent news related to that is that statewide, because of the decrease in funding, and as I mentioned before, awards were made based on how certain projects fit in with the statewide middle mile effort. Our applications that went in September, none of them have been approved to date. What we've heard from the California Public Utilities Commission is that will be considered highly in round 2. So essentially they've created round 1, which is done to date. They've made the awards, and then round 2 early next year, where they're going to combine the existing funding that's left over with federal funding from the Broadband Equity Accessibility Program and BEAD. And so that will be considered early next year. So we're having conversations with our consultant, Golden State Connect Authority, on how we might want to retool our applications based on what might be slightly different guidelines under the federal requirement, but still those conversations are starting right now. Then we'll continue the permits and the low-level design, which is the detailed design that gets to the households, and install and build out in 2026. So going parallel with the middle mile effort, so that once middle mile's done, we'll be able to connect directly to that. And then the last mile connection, phase 2, obviously this is a little presumptive, but we still need to identify funding for that and applications, but we'll submit in early next year again for those additional 5 areas that have already been designed. In the same timeline, we can catch up and try to be ready by the end of 2026. Next slide. So that concludes my update, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Director Infante.
Just a couple of technical questions, just because I'm curious. If you go into an area, like you were saying that you go down 154, they want to go, Camp 4 wants to go, Chumash wants to have it going into Camp 4. Camp 4 hasn't been designed yet, to the best of my knowledge. So what do? You bring a line in and just end it and then let them connect to it later? Is that the process?
So my understanding, just based on some brief conversations with members from the tribe, is that they'll be serving both the old reservation and then the new development. And so you saw that there's a kind of a little spur that comes back on 246, about 3 miles. So they'll be connecting there, and then immediately, maybe they'll phase it where they'll make the old reservation connections, and then they'll create, like you said, a spur out for future development when that's fully planned, or maybe they have certain points that they want to have access based on future the planning of routes and roads.
That makes sense. Thank you. And excuse me. I still have never heard who maintains these lines. Who pays for damage? Who takes care of accidental breakage? Who's taking care of these, all the lines that are gonna get put in?
City of Bealton.
You didn't read that?
That's okay, we'll give it to Dave, that's fine, I don't care.
That'll be a
Put it all on
negative.
Not the meeting. It's on you.
Have to show up.
Dave's smiling, he's okay.
That's an excellent question, and I think it's something that obviously is considered as we were initially even starting our work on who we hire as a contractor, and it's like for those first 4 priority locations, the elegant solution about working with Golden State Connect Authority and those last mile connections is they are the owner and maintainer of the facilities, and so we pay them for creating the design. Then they go out and one tool that they use is the Loan Loss Reserve Program, which is a statewide program to kind of essentially bond for that work, and then they they have kind of they obviously have a business model that shows that how they would fee back to the people that are being served and how it works out and it pencils out. And so the bottom line, to answer your question, is none of your major member agencies would have to worry about that under that case. So.
That helps a lot, thank you. Thank you very much.
Director Osborne?
Thank you for the update, Fred. This is long in coming, and I thank you for the priorities we've made to the communities that are underserved. That last mile commitment is so important given the lessons we learned during the pandemic, and just knowing that our students might have the opportunity to do homework from home. And have a reliable service is a huge benefit. I know it's a lot of work, and I appreciate that we have saved money and potentially can put some of that excess towards additional designs for those communities. So keep us informed as that comes through, and we need to sign off on that change.
Yeah, that's just a quick note on that comment is that one of the things we're considering, obviously we're partnered with the county on the grant, so we could bring some recommendations to both agencies on the cost savings, and that might be fairly soon because we only have about 8 months left on the grant timeline. But serving anchor institutions, both in the county and maybe in cities where right now we've been focused on households, but maybe areas, community centers, things like that can be served.
Santa Barbara?
Yeah, Director Hartman has her light on.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to preface 3 questions. First, with the comment that I think that this overall project really shows that government can be efficient and effective. And a special call out to Fred, who's taken his expertise from complex project management and the 101 and applied it to this. I think we've really benefited from that, and SBCAG staff and county staff. My first question, you already alluded to it, and that is wireless versus fiber. I have a neighbor who's actually piloting for Verizon a wireless. So could you give us some quick talking points about why it's important to have fiber optic cable actually in the ground? And I guess I'll let you answer, and then I'll ask my next 2 questions.
Well, I'll answer that under the presumption that I'm still learning myself in this whole area, and so, but what I do know is that obviously fiber is a much faster capability for speeds, and so I think that's the performance criteria we really work towards in making these projects eligible and most competitive is meeting certain criteria and standards that are trying to be achieved so that people have reliable internet connection. And wireless obviously can be considered in areas that are quite remote, where it doesn't pencil out to get beneath the ground or in-ground fiber connections, but maybe they pull off a hub and they're able to at least provide an improved wireless connection to some areas. And all those types of scenarios are going to be covered at a very high level under our program EIR, just so that member agencies can make those decisions and internet service providers when projects are identified.
And then my next question goes to, the public-private partnership, and I think this relates to what Mayor Infante was asking about. But at the middle mile that the state is doing, as I understood it, there'll be a lease back with fierce. So on the last mile, could you describe, I mean, there's tremendous amount of public money going into all of this, and I hope there is, the public, that it isn't just the benefits accrue only to private companies. So can you talk about that?
Well, I think the state, if I understand the question correctly, Director Hartman, is that through the chair, that that the state was making decisions as to how to maximize the number of mileage based on parameters that they were left with as far as the amount of money that was available and the increasing prices that were being seen for building out. I didn't mention, originally their plan was like 10,600 miles. I think they're down to about 8,000 miles. I think that number was in the staff report. So there's been a 20% reduction in the overall statewide mileage, but I would gather that the overall goal was how best we can serve the public with the number of, with the resources that we have. And obviously that included making partnerships with some of these larger conglomerates that are in the business of building, regional middle mile networks. The Fierce Group, for instance, they're building a whole network in the Central Valley, and so, like I mentioned before, it seemed natural for them to then come through the Kern County and on 166 then. So that was a recent change that was made.
So, but how will it work for the last mile in what we're overseeing?
So for the last mile, as I mentioned before, essentially the provider will be the Golden State Connect Authority, and they represent the public agencies. Okay. They represent 40 rural counties, and so we have representation on the RCRC board with Director Nelson, and so I think that's always of utmost importance, I think, in their mind, is how to serve the public and the connections.
Okay, that helps. And then my last question is, now that we formed the JPA, how do we fund a position such as yours going forward? We don't really have a funding source other than grants. Is that correct?
That is correct. Right now, my time on this effort is, and if Director Kern's listening in, is currently budgeted through the LATA grant. So anytime I charge is solely through that grant. There are other grant opportunities where that could happen, but I think the larger question maybe that you're alluding to, Director Hartman, is that if SBCAG is the regional authority for broadband and this is the long-term mission of this agency, then how do we fund that going forward? So
yes, and so I hope that'll come back to us at some point, because I think there's no question this has to be a long-term commitment. Thank you.
Director Perotti has a question.
I have a comment, and my questions have been asked and answered, but my comment is it's so impressive where we started, how we started, and where we've ended so far. So I'm just really thankful for all the work that people have put into this, and thank you, Fred, for all your work, and we're all kind of learning the ins and outs of this together, so thank you for that. That was my comment.
No further lights in Santa Barbara.
All right. Director King, we good? Okay.
No action, just receive the report.
Is there any public comment? Any chance?
Chair Lavanino, we have no requests for public comment.
Okay, Fred, thank you very much. Great presentation. All right, so I do not believe that we have an executive director's report today. So we will skip 6 and we will move straight to 7. Madam Clerk? Caltrans District Director Report. Yeah. I guess I can say that. Do we have Caltrans online?
Yes. Good afternoon. Are you able to hear me?
We can.
Great. So good morning, Chair Lavanino, directors, members of the public. Veronica Lazama on behalf of Caltrans District Director Scott Eads. 2 items to report on this morning on the maintenance side of the house. First is that the US 101 San Jose Creek Bridge project in Goleta continues with drilling operations that began last week on Tuesday. Drilling operations are occurring Monday through Saturday from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. and drilling work is expected to conclude early in September. Secondly, one-way traffic control has also started last week for the construction of the State Route 154 and Baseline Edison Roundabout project in near Los Olivos and Santa Ynez. The project will include landscaping, a restriped bike lane, sidewalks, and a lighting system. The one-way traffic control on State Route 154 will occur from Monday through Thursday between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. and will resume later that evening between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. On Fridays, the schedule will slightly change with traffic control occurring between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m. and resuming again between midnight and 6 a.m. This project is anticipated to be completed in the spring of 2025, and I realize that was quite a bit of information. So if the board is so inclined to receive more information, staff is more than happy to send the press releases to the board for your reference. And that concludes my report. Happy to take any questions that the board may have. Thank you for your time.
Director Infante.
On our last city council meeting a couple days ago, we had a great presentation from Caltrans on the, what's it listed here as, the State Route 154 Alamo Pintado pedestrian bridge. Your presentation shows here the construction timeline was 2023 to 2025. He said 2029 to 2030. Got a comment?
Yeah, I can definitely double check on that, but these are the information that I have for now, but I'll certainly circle back with you if that's okay.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
We have a couple comments up here from Santa Barbara, Director Hartman and Director Prodi.
So I just want to, please do send the press releases to SBCAG board members. I send those out in newsletters and social media because we get a lot of questions. Thank you.
And Director Prodi.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just have a question on the bridge work in Goleta. The time of drilling was 6 to 6, and now it's 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm just wondering, and help me understand why there was a need to start so early so that I can answer our constituents' questions of why the drilling starts at 4 a.m.
Yeah, good question. I can definitely contact the project manager and get the details on that. Typically, what happens is you want to get work early so that the crew can end as soon as possible. But I realize that could possibly have an impact on, some of the noise issues in the area. But I can certainly communicate those to the team and get back to you in regards to those questions. And I did want to clarify that the bridge is anticipated to be completed in 2026 with some landscaping that will occur for about a year after. So final wrap up will be in 2027.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I had a quick question for Caltrans from the city of Santa Barbara. We've had a very productive partnership with you in terms of the encampment clearing and whatnot. Has the governor's recent edict had any effect on policies or procedures for Caltrans?
We are starting to have some conversations regarding the executive order. We are having some internal meetings, and we should be able to send something out to you all, hopefully in the near future. But please know that is something that we are definitely coordinating internally.
Yeah, it's been very positive for us so far. So very good.
Great. And any concerns that you may have, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, and we'd be happy to circle back on that.
Thank you. And Director Hartman has her light on.
Sorry, I have one more thing. I had a group come into my office hours in Solvang yesterday talking about the roundabout at Baseline, and I just wanted to pass on that two things. First of all, there's some concern about the Somerset Farm and how October is when a lot of the construction activity will occur, and that's really when that's their big season for selling. So we're going to try to propose different alternatives to mitigate some of the impacts on their business. But the other thing is that they were extremely complimentary of Caltrans staff who are managing the project and how careful they've been to reach out to the community. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Thank you, Director Hartman.
Director Julian?
I just wanted to comment on Caltrans and SBCAG staff for working with the community regarding Black Road and 166. Caltrans also met with the GBA Guadalupe Business Association a couple weeks ago to talk about what was going on along Highway 1, along the business corridor. So we appreciate those connections. So thank you, SBCAG staff and Caltrans.
Excellent. Okay, seeing no other comments, appreciate input from Caltrans today.
Thank you.
That takes us to 1-minute reports. We'll start down in Santa Barbara.
Director Perotti has a report.
Yes, we're excited today that we will be having our ribbon cutting for the official opening of our first permanent supportive housing project in Goleta, and that's at 2 o'clock. And I'm really looking forward to cutting the ribbon.
No further reports from Santa Barbara.
All right, Santa Maria. I will just say that this I think it was yesterday, I'm getting old, yesterday or the day before, we were at the graduating class, first graduating class for our new 911 dispatchers, which is kind of, it's a regional deal. This is the Regional Fire Communications Center. And so what this does for the community is it really takes down the boundaries, the division lines of who's responding to a fire call. So that it doesn't matter if you're in Orchid or you're in Santa Maria or down in Santa Barbara, if you're in Goleta or Nolita or Santa Barbara or Montecito, instead of waiting for that, you're gonna get the nearest asset delivered to you. So yesterday was the initial graduation, and it was pretty cool. And we're gonna be getting on that in the next month or so. So with that, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn. Our next meeting is September 19th of 2024. Have a great day.